for those of you who are not following along what I'm talking about with seals, let me show you a chart that gives some representation. There are many different charts. This one is put together by Van Kampen himself, one of the fathers of the Prewrath rapture. And it's hard to see, but because the chart is fairly busy, but there are the 7 seals starting from the left side of your screen, reading left to right. We've got, and they're just numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those are the seals. As far as timing, you'll see that most of those seals, according to Van Kampen's perspective and timing, most of them take place prior to the most of them take place during the front half of the 70th week. That's what I was trying to say. But very important to the proving of the pre-wrath view, or establishing it, strengthening it of it, is that all of the seals run their course before the day of the Lord is poured out. So this is again a feature that must be maintained by the pre-wrath view, is that the seals do not represent the judgment of God on wicked humanity. Rather, the wrath of God is. So you think, well, what are the judgments? Why are they even called judgments? What are the seals anyway? Well, without digressing too much, they are the beginning of judgment. So there's some judgment there. I don't want you to misunderstand me. But what I'm trying to say is that at the time that the seals are being poured out, the righteous are still on earth. So in the bigger scope of the pictures that we were painted by the flood earlier with Noah and with Sodom and Gomorrah and Lot, if you're thinking of judgment as the flood in Noah and fire and brimstone in Sodom and Gomorrah, we could say that God waited until the righteous were out of the way and safe before the judgment fell. So in that regards, the seals don't contain that type of judgment. The wrath of God does not come down on planet Earth until the righteous are removed from the scene. That's what I'm talking about. Here's another picture that I think is very helpful. We have the seals at the very bottom of your screen running the length from left to right. And what Eggman is describing is that the rapture, or coming of the Son of Man, date unknown, as it shows on this chart, actually cuts short the Great Tribulation. And those events, the cutting short of the Great Tribulation and the rapture, date unknown, the coming of the Son of Man, the resurrection, those take place after the 5th seal, after the 6th seal, but before the 7th seal. Things like that. So the 5th seal martyred are what we're talking about right now. There's another view. There's Eggman's complete 7th week chart, but at the moment we're not going to use it. It's just too busy, and I don't have time to look through it. I found this on just this week, put out by a church that preaches the pre-wrath. That teaches pre-wrath. But notice, by way of timing, they simply divide up most of the seals and put them into the first 3.5 years of the 7 years, and then the resurrection and wrath, it takes place at the second half. So this is, in my opinion, a kind of mid-trib as far as timing, because rapture and return and resurrection take place right in the middle between the two, but at the same time, it is pre-wrath. So this is just to illustrate that we've got a kind of some equivocation going on between the phrases tribulation, wrath, and things like that. Really, pre-tribbers are the original pre-wrathers, right? We pre-wrathers are pre-wrathers, but we pre-wrathers are also post-tribbers, right? But we're not classic post-tribbers, but we are post-trib. So we believe that the rapture takes place after the tribulation, but before the wrath. So we're pre-wrath, post-trib, whereas the pre-tribbers are the original post. They're pre-wrath, but they are pre-trib. So, I mean, the names can really be confusing. I believe this is more of a mid-trib view. I found it online. I thought, wow, that's kind of helpful. It shows the seals. That's one of the reasons I'm showing it to you right now. It's got the seals in full view. And you can see that even by looking at the seals, that the label, the beginning of sorrows, is accurately labeled there, meaning the church goes through that, and so does the world. They go through the beginning of sorrows. Everybody goes through the beginning of sorrows. That's the point. All three groups, the world, Israel, and the church, they all go through the beginning of sorrows. But then when we get to the Great Tribulation, it's tribulation leveled against the Christians, the abomination of desolation, mark of the beast, starting at the 5th seal. Van Kampen, I think, locates it starting at the 4th seal. ALAN KURSCHNER also would say that the Great Tribulation starts at the 4th seal, possibly. So there's some difference in opinion there between 4th and 5th. But rapture and return take place around the 6th seal with the resurrection or something like that. The second coming of Jesus and resurrection right around the 6th seal according to this, which, like I said, looks like a mid-trib chart to me, somewhat of a modified mid-trib, almost a combination of a mid-trib and it has some post-trib features in there, right? It has the rapture and the resurrection, both synonymous with one another. Instead of putting the resurrection instead of putting the return of Christ at the far right of this chart, this one puts them closer to the middle, like a Prewrath chart would do. But unlike a post-trib, they're closer to the middle point. So, like I said, this is kind of a mid-trib because it cuts it right down the middle. But going back to Brother Eggman, germane to our study is the differentiation between the wrath of God and the wrath of Satan. These 5th seal martyrs in the book of Revelation chapter 6. These martyrs ask God, how long will it be before he judges the evil actions occurring on earth? This is very important when it comes to understanding the context of why they are saying what they're saying to God, and God's answer as to wait a little while until the number of your fellow brothers and sisters, your fellow servants, are also killed just like you were. I'm paraphrasing Revelation chapter 6, 5th seal language. So we have a question as to why aren't you judging yet, which I believe is a strong indicator that the wrath of God has not been poured out at that point. I believe that's the import of why the saints are saying what they're saying, the souls under the altar, who are disembodied at this point in time, as far as I can tell. They do not have resurrection bodies. They're asking God, when are you going to judge? And God says, just wait a little while. I am going to judge, but it's coming. Just wait. So that I think both their plea and God's response is indicative of the fact that wrath has not occurred yet. Brother Eggman continues, he says, they are told that the time of judgment has not yet come, but will soon commence. So go back and read Revelation 6, 9 through 11 on your own. But when we get to the 6th seal, Eggman says, when the 6th seal opens, the people of the earth declare that God's wrath has come. Go back and read it on your own, just to confirm, right? The 6th seal is the interesting statement and declaration by the world, not only that they can see God and the Lamb sitting at the right hand of God, the one sitting on the throne, but also they declare that the wrath of God has come, and who can stand against this wrath? And their actions indicate that this is a theophany. They see God, this is supernatural, and they seek to crawl into the very rocks and holes and cracks of the earth. I mean, their actions alone indicate, as far as I can tell, let me go back to those charts to show you why I'm talking about this. Let's move away from that for a moment. Let's go back here. This is truly a pre-wrath one instead of a mid-trib. If you look at the seals of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, 1 through 5 are essentially things that could either be chalked up to natural disasters or wickedness of humanity as leveled against other human beings. Humans fighting humans, wars and rumors of wars, famines, mass death, Antichrist massing armies here and there, moving chess pieces around the board, people being martyred for their faith. These are all things that could either be natural or a result of humans using and abusing the earth in the wrong way, right? With wars and famines and hoarding and rich getting richer and the poor getting poor. So the world is very it's in an imbalance, but it's not necessarily God saying, I am supernaturally intervening. The people in the world can basically look at seals 1 through 5 as saying, well, we've had wars, we've had famines, we've had mass death, we've had people martyred, we have had religious heretics being slaughtered because they don't agree with the system. Nothing new here going on, nothing to see, keep moving. Yeah, one guy declaring himself to be Christ, well, yeah, we've had those before too. Despots and tyrants on the earth, yeah, we've had those before too. Dictators ruling from their place of importance, yeah, we've had those too. So the world isn't really impressed, and they're not really afraid. For the most part, as long as you are being supplied for. So take the mark and you'll eat and drink and sleep well at night. Yeah, that's what Antichrist is going to say to the rest of the world. Take my mark, recognize me as God, and I'll take care of you. So the world doesn't really have anything to fear. But when we get to the 6th seal, with the sign in the sky, the sun going dark, the moon turning to a color of blood, the stars falling from the sky, which are probably not the real stars, right? The Greek word, there's asteros, I think, where we get the word asteroids from. So it's probably meteoric activity. But it's described in the Bible as stars, right? You understand what I'm saying? Even we today, we say shooting stars, falling stars. They're not really stars. They're just chunks of rock flying through space, hitting our atmosphere and burning up, and thus they look like streaks of light. They look like burning stars, whatever. Well, we know what we're talking about. So that even still starts to introduce this supernatural element because of the cluster effect of the sun, moon, stars, and we have some earthquakes going on, creating tsunamis if you read the Luke account. But the point I'm trying to emphasize is that when we start to get to the 6th seal, things start to become supernatural. And the earth takes notice. And then when the sign of the Son of Man appears in the sky, where the lightning flashes in the sky from the east to the west, right? Everything in the universe is turned dark with the sun, moon, and stars. And then we have the supernatural brilliance, which I believe is the glory of God himself, the Shekinah glory, the Shekinah glory, as we say in the South when I used to live in Alabama. That glory lights up the sky. And that, I believe, is when the sky splits open, right? John describes it in Revelation chapter 6 with the 6th seal. The sky is peeling apart like a scroll when it's rolled up. I mean, that sends chills up the back of my neck when I read those passages, because that's when the supernatural kicks in. No more business as usual. The earth takes notice. It's a theophany. They see the very Son of God sitting at the right hand of the one sitting on a throne. I mean, and every eye sees Yeshua making his descent to planet Earth on a cloud, not on a horse on a cloud, but just on a cloud. Don't get confused. And he's making his way to planet Earth, and they're scared to death, and they should be. And that's when they say what Brother Eggman describes there. They realize that the wrath has come. This judgment continues, Brother Eggman says, with the trumpets and the bowls. After the opening of the 6th seal, the souls from under the altar are seen together with all the Christians who had come out of the great tribulation as a great multitude before God's throne. Revelation 7, 9 through 17. Very, very conspicuous that we have this great multitude showing up in heaven, exactly where they should be chronologically if we were to describe a rapture occurring after the 6th seal, but prior to the 7th seal, which initiates the trumpet judgments. Exactly where it should be according to a pre-wrath model, but not quite where it should be, where these great people show up. Not quite where it should be if we're describing a post-trib or even a pre-trib. Both of those views are two polar opposites. They're pushed too far out to the edges of the 70th week to fit with a proper chronology of the reading of the book of Revelation, where we're at in the time frame that we're studying at the moment. Eggman continues. We've got about negative minutes left as I'm looking at my timer that ran out, but I do want to read down through some more of this. Let me see how far it goes. Yeah, I don't want to go too far. So I'll find a stopping point here. Speaking of the souls under the altar, they are no longer depicted as souls. Now they have resurrected bodies and are seen praising God. Right? Did you catch that? You've got to catch that. If you don't catch that, then you're missing details the Bible, I think, is giving to you on purpose. At the 5th seal, they're disembodied souls. At the resurrection, those souls come back with God and receive their bodies, which are resurrected from the earth. And yes, they come with God. This is in 2 Thessalonians No, this is in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. Do I have time to look at it? Yeah, I should. I must. Let me close those Greek terms, look at the references here. Give me a moment. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. I got to show you this in case you're wondering, like, what? No, not 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. Let's go to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Is it this one? I'm butchering this. I'm doing horrible. Nope, it's not this one either. So it could be 1 Corinthians 15. This is what happens when you study, and just all the references get jumbled into your head. Let me jump down to starting in verse 51. That's where the resurrection language really kicks in. No, it's not there either. Wow, I'm failing you guys. Let's look at chapter 4 of 1 Thessalonians. Oops, drop down a bit. Yeah, okay, here we go. All right, so, apologize. I'm not perfect. I'm not even the greatest theologian. Haha, yeah, news to you guys. All right, so 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. We're closing with this, by the way. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, I wanted to show you this. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, Paul is explaining to the Thessalonian church there that their loved ones who have gone on to be with the Lord are safe. Where are they? They are with the Lord. This is proof that soul sleep is errant theology. Souls are sleeping in the dust of the ground if you're a believer. No, that doesn't work. Why? Because number one, those souls are already with the Lord. They're under the altar at this moment. They're people who have died, and it doesn't say in the Revelation passage whether or not they cannot be those who died only from the tribulation or those who died even prior. Although it does talk about those who were. The response from God where He says, "Wait a little bit longer until more of your fellow believers are killed just like you were." So the immediate context is tribulation souls, tribulation saints who got killed, tribulation Christians who got killed for their testimony, for their faith. And they're the immediate ones who are crying out. But the point I'm trying to make is that when Paul was writing to the Thessalonian crowd, he says in verse 14, "For if we believe that Jesus died and rose from the dead, so also God will do what? Bring with Him," who's the Him? Means Jesus. "Bring with Jesus those who have fallen asleep through Jesus." Meaning at the time that Paul wrote this was 2,000 years ago. There was no tribulation going on, the likes of which Jesus was describing or John was describing in the book of Revelation, the Great Tribulation. It was tribulation for the Thessalonians, yes, but it wasn't great tribulation like as in eschatological Daniel's 70th week of Daniel's 70th week tribulation. It wasn't that type. That's still in the future. But the point I'm trying to highlight is that the ones that God brings with Jesus, it says right here, are those who have fallen asleep through Jesus, meaning those disembodied souls are the ones that God's going to bring with His Son when Jesus returns to rescue us from the persecution of Antichrist, from the tribulation itself, so to cut that thing short. Otherwise, we know the reason it's cut short is because Jesus says if it's not cut short, the elect wouldn't survive. The elect here being Israel, the elect being the church. Both are the elect. So in closing tonight, Brother Eggman is talking about this distinction between God's wrath and Satan's wrath and why it's important for us. And he's centering on this discussion about the people who were resurrected, these fifth seal martyrs, the sixth seal sign, and the great multitude that shows up in heaven when they do in Revelation chapter 7. Their prayers, speaking of the fifth seal martyrs, are mixed with fire from God's altar and hurled down to the earth. In Revelation 8, 3 through 5. This is also an indicator of the timing of the wrath of God being initiated at this point, but not prior. If language means anything, then John's giving us a chronology, a sequence of the seals, which are using cardinal numbers are named 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, right? And then at the same time, we overlap what John is telling us with what Jesus already told us, and we can begin to sketch out a very, very accurate time frame as to when these events should be taking place. The trumpet judgments of God's wrath begin after this in Revelation 8, verse 6. This is why we pre-wrathers say, this is one of the reasons, why the book of Revelation gives us the indicator that the wrath of God, which initiates with the cracking open of the seventh seal, which initiates the trumpet judgments, God's wrath doesn't start until then. Let me show you the chart again in case you're lost. It's the yellow arrow on the right side of your screen. Day of the Lord, seventh seal, plus trumpets, plus bowls. This is when the wrath of God commences. This is distinguished from the great tribulation, that blue section prior in the chart that you're seeing right now. Let me show you another chart, the one that we've been using the most. In this chart, we have great tribulation commencing after the midpoint. It is the abomination of desolation that kicks off the great tribulation. And then the God's wrath, day of the Lord section is at the farthest right of the chart. But the thing that's between the two, and this is a very important thing, this is the significant thing, this is the main event, is the pre-wrath rapture or the resurrection. Either one, whatever one you want to label it, it's the same event. The rapture and the resurrection are the same thing. So going back to Brother Eggman and concluding, the fifth and sixth seals provide a timeline. It's the point I'm trying to emphasize, and then I'm going to close. The opening of the fifth seal occurs during the time of the Great Tribulation, and the day of the Lord begins shortly after the opening of the sixth seal. And let me see, do I want to read one more? Yeah, let's read this and then close, because he's still within the thought. The transition from the fifth seal, the Great Tribulation, to the sixth seal, which precedes the day of the Lord, is evident in how the people of the earth respond to the sixth seal. When the sign appears in the sky, every person on the face of the earth sees Jesus come and flees from him in terror, right? Read Matthew 24:30, as well as Revelation 6:12-13. And I pause and say that this is very important, because if, according to post-trib, if according to this time the wrath has already been pouring out, or even pre-trib, if the wrath of God has already been poured out ongoing since the beginning of the first seal, i.e. the beginning of the 7th week. Remember, pre-trib, according to this model, has God's wrath starting and commencing at the beginning of the 7th week, at the beginning of the 7 years with tribulation, but nevertheless it's still God's wrath. And then pre-trib has the same concept, same timing. God's wrath starts at the very beginning of the 7 years and runs the entire length of 7 years. But if that's the case, that means that the seals contain God's wrath. But according to Brother Eggman and according to the pre-wrath model, the day of the Lord, i.e. God's punishment, God's wrath, doesn't start until after the rapture and after the resurrection, which according to this chart, which is a pre-wrath chart, the timing locates the rapture after the fifth seal, after the sixth seal, but before the seventh seal cracks open. So that's where we place the rapture. We're not saying we know the day or the hour, but we know the season and we know the chronology. We know the sequence. That's all we're saying as pre-wrathers. So Brother Eggman closes, at least tonight's study. We're not done with the blog. We'll have to pick this up next week. The sixth seal portrays the people of earth fleeing for the mountains and hiding in caves, crying out to the mountains and rocks, "Fall on us and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb." Revelation 6:15. If, according to the pre-trib and post-trib, the wrath has already been blazing for the last 6 seals, then why didn't the people say anything? Why not the description of, fall on us, fall from the face of him? If the wrath was commenced with the introduction of Antichrist at the beginning of the week, and the earthquakes and the rumors of wars and the famines and pestilence, why weren't they looking to the sky and saying, "Wow, look, it's God, it's Jesus, let's get out of here"? No, there's no reaction that John tells us. And we don't have the reaction from the saints in the fifth seal martyr saying, "Hey, how long until you judge?" So given both of these very important seals, seal 5 and seal 6, the people involved, the martyrs and the people on the earth, and the reactions from both groups, and the fact that 5th and 6th seals are both show up in a sequence of seals, I think it's a fairly strong case that can be made by the pre-wrathers that we're looking at events that are not the wrath of God. I don't believe they are. That's a very weak case in my opinion. I could be wrong, but this is just seems obvious to me that the wrath hasn't started yet. In this way, Eggman says the sixth seal is the first time the book of Revelation declares the day of the Lord has begun. It's also the first time that the word wrath shows up. When they say, fall on us, let me back up. When they say, fall on us, the wickedness, right, the world. Fall on us and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath. That word wrath there, it's the first time it shows up in the book of Revelation. Kind of, I think, indicative of the fact that this is where wrath begins. But in this way, the sixth seal is the first time the book of Revelation declares the day of the Lord has begun. Read Revelation 6:17. The terror that the people of the world experience during the day of the Lord is also described in Isaiah 2:10 through 12 and 17, verse 18. And we're not going to read it tonight, so we're going to leave off with a bit of a cliffhanger. So we are discussing distinguishing between the Great Tribulation and the Day of the Lord. This is Brother Aaron Eggman's blog post that we're borrowing here. And I hope you stick around for the remainder of this. I hope this isn't too confusing. We're going to pick this up next week, but that'll do it for Eschatology, a biblical study of end time events.